Doomed Planet, Obituaries for the Damned.
One subject that I'm definitely confident discussing is editorial cartoons. Because a long time ago, I published an all-editorial cartoon magazine that became a newspaper. It was my first publication that wasn't just a zine on the old copy machine. Offset printed and everything. And some of my favorite cartoonists that we were able to publish, Herb Bloch and Pat Oliphant, some of the greats. We had Hunter S. Thompson was doing a syndicated column at the time, which we republished. And also we were publishing Matt Groening's Life in Hell, which brings us to episode 132 of the Doomed Planet podcast, Horsey Sex, a Seattle cartoonist's bestial erotic novel. We're talking, of course, about David Horsey. David was the editorial cartoonist for the Seattle Post-Intelligencer from 1979 until they imploded in 2011. Everyone at the Seattle PI was fired, except for Horsey, who stayed with the conglomerate that owned the PI at the time. And as we know, the whole profession, this whole category of artists that get paid for their work, known as editorial cartooning, has been decimated by the decline of the great American daily newspapers. Back when I was publishing the Albany Cartoon Journal, you can look that up, in the late 80s, there were more than 100, cartoonists getting paid full time in the United States to do editorial cartoons. And of course, it's a hard job. You have to be able to draw, and then you have to try to avoid all these cliches, right? Like the scales of justice, or you're meeting someone has died that's important, and there they are in heaven. Like impossible to avoid those cliches. Now, back to David Horsey. He can draw. He's a brilliant draftsman. He draws quite well. He does have sort of a unique style. We'll get to this. People accuse him of being a left wing or something. No, he's a liberal. He's a boomer. Talk about the trajectory of a baby boomer. You get a cushy job at a newspaper drawing cartoons, starting in 1979, lasting decades, and then you're able to get by after that because of your privilege and your connections. Did I mention that David wrote a book? Yes, we'll get to that. It's called Beach of Stars. Let's examine his cartoon style, though. In 2021, there was a heated race for Seattle City Attorney. Pete Holmes lost in the primary to Republican Ann Davison. Pete Holmes, of course, was courageous enough to support I-502, the bill that legalized recreational marijuana, Washington State. I ran into him in the supermarket shortly after that, and I said, "Mr. Holmes, thank you for supporting that bill." And he looked at me and nodded, judging, a stoner, and nodded and thank you. So this contested race, Holmes and Davison and Nicole Thomas Kennedy, the progressive candidate. Well, the Seattle Times, David Horsey, by the way, right, moved on to the Seattle Times. Now he's kind of syndicated, and he publishes with them sometimes. He published a cartoon showing Nicole Thomas Kennedy holding a torch, and her shirt says Nicole Thomas Kennedy, in case. Now, Horsey is a really great caricaturist. He can draw likenesses of real people, but of course her T-shirt here, black T-shirt, of course, black block shirt, says Nicole Thomas Kennedy. She's holding a burning torch and a sign that says, "Burn the jails." And two bystanders say, "Well, you got to admit it's a novel way to run for city attorney." So that is David Horsey, liberal. Like, he's maybe he does not like Republicans. He's obviously not a Trump person, but he's perfectly happy with the status quo and with Democrats as long as they're not too radical. As a side note, before he was fired in 1994, Brian Bassett was the editorial cartoonist for the Seattle Times. And you might know him for this daily comic strip called Adam. It's about or Adam at Home. It's about a stay-at-home dad addicted to coffee. And I noticed, Bassett does not have a byline on that strip anymore. They have a new artist and a slightly different style. And I'm wondering the way that works. Like, did he have any ownership in that cartoon at all? And does he still get money from that? But don't worry too much, because Brian Bassett, also pens a daily newspaper comic strip called Red and Rover. This I don't like so much. It's a very syrupy, sappy, milquetoast version of Calvin and Hobbes. It's about a boy and his dog, basically. The golden age of cartoonery or newspaper cartoonery really was in the 1920s. Some of these cartoonists became incredibly rich. Now, not so much. Like, I don't know how much Red and Rover brings in. Like, how many newspapers are even left to bring in? Anyway, back to Horsey. Here's a strip, a more recent one. Home from College. It's a family at a restaurant. "Happy Thanksgiving, guys. Are you ready to order?" says the waiter. "I no longer celebrate that Eurocentric racist holiday, and your use of the word guys negates my gender identity, making me feel marginalized," says the fresh home, radicalized from college daughter. And the little boy, her little brother, says, "Mommy, what's marginalized?" So that's the worldview. A couple years ago, Horsey posted about newspapers disappearing in Washington State. Didn't mention the demise of the Seattle PI in that post, where they fired everyone except him. Horsey likes to write essays to accompany his cartoons. I've never heard of that. I think more standard practice is you write an essay and then it's illustrated by someone or maybe by you. So in that Thanksgiving panel, he wrote as a sideline, "Campus protesters need to get a sense of proportion if they want to be taken seriously." And of course, bloat flew no matter who. Horsey, good old, fine supporting genocide as long as Trump is not in. So he did this cartoon. Someone is looking at a ballot. There's two ways you can vote: democracy or magatocracy. Horsey's worldview aligns with that of his masters at the Seattle Times, or just, boomers, wealthy white boomers in general. Homeless people are a disgusting eyesore, and politicians should take action to get them out of our sight. Some pro-Israel Zionist cartoons to be expected. Divest SPD does great work following the Seattle cops. Pointed out that there's not much daylight between Jonathan Cho, right-wing Chud, and David Horsey, an ostensible liberal who basically has lifetime tenure at the city's largest paper. Well, not exactly his career trajectory, but close enough. Like, baby boomers, basically, if they were not drop-dead drunks or horrible junkies, could get a job. Even a working class job might have a union attached to it. You could afford a house and a car. There's one of his illustrations of homeless people. It's a guy tying off. Of course, no one does, and shooting up. No one does that anymore, Horsey. You're just smoking fentanyl off of foil. Another guy's bashing in a car window, probably to steal the fentanyl within. Only a third of homeless people have substance abuse problems. 1/10 of them reported drugs or alcohol as the reason why they are homeless. Half have disabilities, according to Divest SPD. In another Horsey classic, there's a bunch of guys all sitting on the ground, nodding off, using drugs, dealing drugs. See the Space Needle in the background. And there's a big sign stating the obvious as an editorial cartoonist. If you can't do it visually, just throw some word salad in there. There's a sign on the wall behind them that says homeless crisis, but homeless is crossed out and spray painted over it is fentanyl. As if fentanyl and not capitalismo has not caused this homeless crisis. Good old Bill Gates, subject of many of our podcast opinions, has a PR problem because of his perversions. David Horsey writes, until there is evidence to the contrary, I will give Bill Gates the benefit of the doubt and assume he fits into the first category. One more rich rube with a big brain who failed to see the trapdoor in front of him. So Horsey gives a free pass to Gates. Speaking truth to power like any good editorial cartoonist or journalist should do. Mexicans are caught in a battle between civilization and savagery. That's another fentanyl cartoon from Horsey. I do like his Trump thin. This makes no sense. The thin black line. There's the Supreme Court lined up facing down a tank. The tank says fascism on it, and it's and with a Trump armband. So, and the tank is actually a giant fat robot with a Nazi helmet on with an American flag. But as if the United States Supreme Court is the thin line between fascism and whatever they are. This one, Trump is a giant fat lizard, and he's got a lady pinned to the ground, and he's licking her with a giant tongue, and his sharp teeth are sticking out. And Joe Biden has come to the entrance of the lizard cave with a sword and chainmail and a shield, and he says, I'm here to rescue you. And the lady being tongued by Trump has a sign that says uncommitted, as if she is not committed to voting for Biden yet. And she says, no, I want somebody younger. So this is before the Kamala Harris catastrophe. We were asked to vote for Joe Biden. And of course, the alternative would be this lizard. Oh, how horrible. History keeps repeating itself in the Middle East. November 24th, 2023. Emperor, the temple is destroyed. The Jews are dispersed. This is a Roman scenario. And the emperor, looking out over the city, says, well, that is one problem solved once and for all. No one will have to think about the Jews and Palestine ever again. I don't get it. You got to be a Zionist, though, if you want a job, I guess, especially in the media.
David Horsey, editorial cartoonist for the Seattle Post-Intelligencer. He'd done thousands of cartoons over the years, but now the usual approach seemed inadequate.
Is Carolyn Levitt the most incompetent liar in White House history? Okay, I like this one. There's Carolyn Levitt, a nice little caricature. And Trump is depicted as a wild boar with the Trump hair. And Donald Trump is the ultimate swamp creature. This one is good. Donald Trump is leaning back. It looks like he's moaning. He's in a swamp with a fish, an alligator, muskrat, and a shark. The shark fin says Epstein, of course. And a snake. And pardons for rich criminals is written on the snake. The snake looks like it's giving Donald Trump a Hummer. I mean, you have to look that one up. And then the caption. This is another interesting thing. A lot of cartoonists do this. Horsey has a typeface. It's just not his handwriting or anything. So he does do hand draw some of the typography, and some of it is a typeface like this, which says, "Instead of draining the swamp, I decided to turn it into my own personal hot tub." And again, he's getting fellatioed by a snake. Okay, I love this one, and this shows the talent that Horsey has squandered. He's such a good artist and will occasionally do the funny bit. Sorry, New England, it wasn't your year, he said, posting a comic. It's a giant raptor or seahawk holding a New England pilgrim by the scruff of his shirt, flying away. The pilgrim is missing a shoe, and on the bare foot there's a lobster pinching his foot. And he's saying, just put me down anywhere. I'll hitch a ride back east with a bad bunny. Wait, did I say this was good? I don't get it. I love the giant eagle. Well, as of late, David Horsey has been promoting his book, Beach of Stars. There's a blurb on the cover from Timothy Egan, well-respected best-selling writer, that says, "Amazingly good." So we'll take his word for it. Horsey is doing a little book tour. He was interviewed by Nancy Guppy, the insufferable local art maven. She has a show on local TV about artists and musicians. We give her credit for just not giving up and doing this decade after decade. Interviewed the charming David Horsey about his new novel at Third Place Books last night. A full house, a great vibe, and David pegged the style meter in his groovy brown leather vest. So he's wearing a boomer college professor outfit of the coat and with a brown leather vest. Before we get into this book, which I may... Wow, we've gone 20 minutes already. We might shorten the review of the book because it is so terrible. Jason Rantz, local weasel, right-wing chud and loser media personality, on March 13th, he writes, Seattle Times cartoonist Dave Horsey reduces female officials to Barbies, brands Jewish Stephen Miller Mein Kampf Ken. Seattle Times cartoonist David Horsey is under fire again after dubbing Jewish advisor, what, Barbie dolls? That can't be true. By Jason Rantz, talk show host and columnist at Seattle Red. Remind me to avoid whatever the Seattle Red is. I don't think it's like a journal of communism. Far left Seattle Times cartoonist Dave Horsey is at it again. And his latest work raises serious questions about whether the self-styled progressive, no one calls him that except you, Rantz, has any line he will not cross. In a new cartoon accompanying column, the notoriously sexist Horsey reduces Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and Attorney General Pam Bondi to Barbie doll tropes. Again, that's not a Horsey thing, and that's something that editorial cartoonists do. He revisits the Ice Barbie nickname. And Pam Bondi he calls cover-up Barbie. As if that was clever and not sexist, according to Jason Rantz. The toy box mockery of the two female officials was offensive enough on his own. Again, the hypocrisy here. Horsey then turned to senior White House advisor Stephen Miller, who is Jewish. Now, and called him Mein Kampf Ken. Is there a Jewish person on the planet that is not more of a Nazi than Stephen Miller? That's a direct comparison of a Jewish man to Adolf Hitler's manifesto. If any conservative commentator hung a Nazi reference on a Jewish public official, the condemnations would be instantaneous and relentless. For Horsey, it barely generates a headline, except at the Jason Rantz School of Right-Wing Filth production. It's not his first time being called out. In 2017, he body-shamed then White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders. And unfortunately for Horsey, he went on TV later to apologize for that. Like, never apologize. Journalists don't apologize.
And now in his first television interview since the controversy erupted, David Horsey joins me from Los Angeles. David, thank you for being here. What could you have been thinking? What could you have been thinking?
I grew up in the same sexist world everybody else did, and stuff just comes out. You know, this is a lifelong process. You just try to get better every day, and you know, sometimes your brain goes crazy.
Reducing sitting female cabinet officials to plastic toys. Labeling a Jewish man with a direct reference to Nazi ideology. The Seattle Times keeps publishing him anyway. I am so sorry, Jason, for your sadness, how deeply this makes you feel that there is a sexist left-wing radical publishing cartoons in the Seattle Times who calls Republicans Nazis. Who would have ever thunk of that? This has been painful going down the Horsey rabbit hole. I will unsubscribe from his newsletter after we publish this issue, but he just sent out a thing, March 27th. Inslee brings his wacky humor to boost Beach of Stars. This is David Horsey and Jay Inslee, former 3-term governor of Washington State. Here's a picture. Now Horsey has removed his coat, and he is wearing indeed a brown leather vest. He's getting a little chunky in the middle in his old age, and the vest does not complement that. But that, I mean, is there a more baby boomer thing that you can imagine? Jay Inslee has a sense of humor that ranges from surprisingly wacky to playfully acerbic. While the 3-term Washington governor's needling wit may not have always won him fans in meetings with solemn editorial boards, or which would be his bosses, or self-important legislators, it certainly showed up at the Eagle Harbor Book Club, where Horsey is promoting his new novel. His first question, Inslee asked perceptive questions that showed me he had not just skimmed the book, praising certain turns of phrase and exploring different characters. He may or may not have been the best choice for president when he ran for the Democratic nomination in 2020, but we could have done worse, and arguably we did. It's funny, he was in one of these Democratic presidential debates, and he looked like a frail old man. We're like, yeah, we already have Joe Biden. We don't need another frail old man. For what it's worth, he is a Democrat, a liberal Democrat. Throughout his 3 terms, there were no tax cuts for the rich, but there was plenty of spending cuts in the state budget, cutting away benefits for people who are not rich. And of course, regressive taxes still reign. And finally, this just came out. Starbucks mermaid casts her gaze toward the Music City. This is the Starbucks mermaid in front of a Starbucks and a sign that says I-90 freeway entrance, which is the highway leading east away from Seattle. She's sticking her thumb out, hitchhiking, holding a sign that says Nashville. Seattle has given birth to several precocious businesses, Nordstrom, Boeing, Microsoft, Amazon, Costco, and Starbucks among them, and has watched them grow beyond their hometown. After a marriage with McDonnell Douglas in 1997, Boeing abandoned its birthplace, headquarters, and ran to Chicago. For the most part, though, the entrepreneurial offspring have stayed close to home. That was a disaster, right? Bezos threatened to move to Virginia. But will Starbucks' lovely green-haired mermaid be leaving the Emerald City to take up residence in a music city? Probably not. But like parents seeing their children grow up, we never want our offspring to stray too far from home. And of course, this is a reference to the newly passed millionaires tax signed by Governor Ferguson. We mock Governor Bob McFerguson a lot on this show, but I give him credit for this. It is claimed that all the millionaires will be moving out of state. Howard Schultz, the founder of Starbucks, did indeed announce he was moving to Florida. Oh, that's sad. Don't let the door slam your ass on the way out. So doubly good news. The Sonics are returning to Seattle almost 20 years after Howard Schultz sold the team and ruined what reputation he might have had. Much later, he ran for president, and that was a debacle, and then he had to bow out saying he had a bad back. And there you have it, David Horsey, editorial cartoonist, servant of his corporate masters, baby boomer, and weirdo, and also novelist, sex novelist. He wrote a dirty book called Beach of Stars. A novel by two-time Pulitzer Prize winning journalist David Horsey. Beach of Stars. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention he won the Pulitzer Prize for editorial cartooning twice. Kind of a big deal. They only give out one of those per year. So, very first page is cringe. This isn't even the first page of the book. This is the title page. There's a QR code, and in the middle of it is a self-portrait of Horsey. To see more of Horsey's work, use the QR code above or go to horseytunes.substack.com. You know, for $50, you can use your domain name and get rid of that Substack top-level domain in your marketing, whatever. I like Substack because it's free. I have a different project that I've used it as free hosting for years, and I'm never going to monetize it. I guess they still make money from my content somehow. Why not? Cover design by David Horsey. That's also cringe. This is well, first of all, I got a hardback somehow from the guy that sends me books to review. Crazy guy, lives up on a mountain, and the hardback is damaged. It's like would be a reject from the printer. It's warped. Weird. Also by David Horsey. He's got some collections of his cartoons. Beach of Stars is in 4 sections: Shannon, Cassiopeia, Estrelita, and Orion. Part 1, Shannon, is in 6 sections: A Summer Day, 1980, A May Evening, 2000, A Slip of Yellow Paper, The Hero, Icarus, a Punk from Queens. Dedicated to his wife, I assume, Nolan Horsey. First sentence of the book: Our destinies are not written in the stars. That's kind of taken, it's not plagiarism per se, but it's taken from a popular Shakespeare quote, which is saying, in effect, you are your own destiny. Don't look for some higher source to guide you. It's up to you, motherfucker. Okay, so, and the baby boomer fantasy begins. I was a 21-year-old American college kid, working as a bartender in training at a resort south of Puerto Vallarta. I was not much of a bartender. It was not much of a resort. So he's sitting around reading books while being a bartender in Mexico. I was working my way through a paperback edition of the Odyssey. The Greeks and their gods were my summer fixation. Why did they formulate their religion around a warring, impetuous, jealous, sex-crazed clan of gods who had to be endlessly appeased? He's talking with some chick. My senior year is coming up. They might go to law school. Law school? What are you doing down here in Mexico? My dad and his partner, Phil, own the place. I thought it would be fun, but I'm going crazy with boredom. Okay, and then this is where it gets weird. There's, he's watching this girl go out for a swim, and an entire pod gathered out there, and she was in the midst of them. I wondered if what she was doing was safe. Would the dolphins give her trouble? Were sharks prowling nearby looking for a snack? Did she have sex with the dolphins, and did he witness that? Because that doesn't come out this early in the book. Okay, and then a May evening in 2000, we're jumping ahead in the baby boomers' life cycle. King County Councilman Ralph Winkman was about to launch an effort to become the next representative from Washington's 1st Congressional District, and I, as his new campaign manager, had designed a dinner as a stage to make him look like a major player in national politics. In the winter of 1980, Doug talked me into skipping an academic quarter to campaign around New Hampshire for Ted Kennedy. We had a tremendous time, and in between the grunt work, Doug took every opportunity to hit on the girls working with us, including one member of the Kennedy clan who, years later, ended up married to a pumped-up celebrity governor of California. That would be Maria Shriver. If you saw recently, the son that Arnold had out of wedlock is now a grown man, and he's a giant muscle-bound goon lifting weights, and Arnold is so proud of him. So, corporate up-and-coming local software company with a funny name, Microsoft, vice president, celebrity chefs, BMW. They're talking about the boomer experience in Seattle. When the divorce became final, the proceeds from the sale of a big chunk of Microsoft stock went into my bank account. That is a baby boomer phrase, if there ever was one. It was one. So he saves a girl from drowning. The bottom half of her bikini was twisted around her ankles. I wrestled it back up to her hips. My polo shirt was over by the rocks, close to being swept out to sea. Another baby boomer phrase. I ran to retrieve it and bounded back to tug it on over her bare torso. Maybe it was foolish to spend precious seconds covering her nakedness, but it seemed like the right thing to do. Finally, on page 81, we get to the sex. Promise, I said. Promise. I laid back in the sand as she moved to straddle me. And, as lazy nocturnal waves rose and retreated around us, Bobby made good on her promise. That's dirty. Wow, can we even say that in a podcast? That is just pornographic filth. The perspective of a gringo. Beyond Mazatlan, another Mexico unfolded. The road became a narrow strip snaking through a tropical forest. Donkey carts, plodding farm trucks, tiny villages where women sold watermelons along the roadside. The towns we passed through looked like targets of a siege, though the only enemy in these forlorn communities were facing was poverty. Garbage dumps and wrecking yards. As a guy living off the overflow of the high-tech bonanza in a city 2,000 miles to the north, I felt a bit of first-world guilt while passing through that poverty-scarred terrain. This is a fantasy, right? That, like, this Microsoft stock, did his wife work at Microsoft? You never know, probably. Bobby has been having a recurring nightmare. Okay, I'll admit it. I skimmed this book. I'm not going to read this. So I have no idea what's going on. It's about a baby boomer in his youth saw a girl having sex with some dolphins, and then he had sex in Mexico, and he's looking back, realizing with fondness how great that was. Bobby said, "The nightmare, it's about me on a horse on a beach, but not like today. In the dream, it's always a nightmare. I'm riding fast along the shore in the dark, and I'm trying to get home, but no matter how long I ride, I can't get there." Her face betrayed a worried distraction. She fiddled with the strap on her horse's bridle. Yeah, David Horsey is a writer. He can write. It's like, what are you writing about, though? And there's some cringe phrases. And a sly, porno coming, people. A sly grin crossed her face. Are you looking for an audition? Our faces were inches apart. Our lips hovered close. Hesitation finally gave way to a kiss, and hands followed where the kiss was leading. We groped each other like horny teenagers with no parental supervision. Buttons came unbuttoned. A blouse lifted. Skin touched skin. I'm sorry, but I'm not sure that is YouTube going to even allow us to publish this podcast, because that is just hardcore pornography. Her hands were down the back of my drooping pants. My right palm held the weight of her left breast. And then coitus interruptus. Estrella ita mia, the voice rang out. We scrambled to pull our clothes back together. Okay. I looked better than I had in years. My belly was flat. My muscles were primed. My body was tanned. My beard was full. And my shaggy hair was now longer than Cassie's. Okay, so the hippie fantasy where the baby boomer looks back on his youth, full of opportunity. Back before neoliberalism had really destroyed most people's chance of having a decent life without being in debt. Shannon had stripped to a lacy turquoise thong and was slathering sunscreen all over herself. Until now, I had thought this place could not be more perfect, but it had lacked one special thing: sunshine streaming over the ivory skin of this particular woman. I'm guessing she is a white woman with that ivory skin. Do you want me to get your back? I said. Okay, I'm not reading any further because that is just fucking disgusting. This is the dirtiest book I've ever read. She had a slim, boyish figure. Don't worry, people. We're on page 316, almost done. Every inch of her was female. I caught her looking. Shannon went down to the boat. I saw her pull off her wet thong and spread it with her other clothes to dry. All I've got to drink is this, I said, handing her water. It's just what I need. She watched me light the fire, skewer the fish on sticks, and prop them up near the flame. Oh, they're going to do the salmon on cedar board style Pacific Northwest cooking of fish in Mexico, baby. Leaning down to grasp Shannon's hips, I lifted her off the rock. Her legs encircled me, and I felt my hardness sleep deep into her velvet softness. Okay, not only is that porn, but if I type that into a plagiarism detector, what am I guessing is going to come back? It's like he's reading old baby boomer Penthouse magazines from like 1978. Well, and 8 months later, Cassie and I came to Los Angeles to settle in and wait. Thanks to the windfall from my lost life in Seattle, you know, the laziest plot line on earth is someone coming into money or winning the lottery. You know, you could go on and on down that cultural rabbit hole. But the your ex-wife worked at Microsoft, so you have a lot of money. That's some lazy shit, bitch. That's it. I apologize. This has been the Doomed Planet podcast, episode 132, Horsey Sex, a Seattle cartoonist's bestial, erotic novel. Thank you for your time.
Find out more at doomedplanet.com.
So David Horsey took a nap.
Bye.